What's going on, guys? It's Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 311 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about Ultimate Captain America. This is a 4-issue miniseries by Jason Aaron and Ron Garney. This also, kind of like the Ultimate Thor miniseries that I talked about yesterday, this came out shortly after Ultimatum, and I guess this was part of a small wave by Marvel that was attempting to revitalize the Ultimate Universe. Because while nobody will say that Ultimatum was a good story, I don't know, I haven't read it, but nobody says that that was a good story. It was basically meant to kind of clean the slate a little bit and offer a chance for creators who hadn't yet gotten a chance to play in Ultimate Universe to come in and kind of shake things up a little bit and kind of work with some of these characters, do some new things. So this was Jason Aaron and Ron Garney attempting to do that. And the story here is that we find out there was a Captain America in the 1970s, while Steve Rogers, the first Captain America, while he was frozen in ice for like 50-something years, we had another Captain America who fought in Vietnam. And he is the Ultimate Universe version of Nuke. And this story is basically these two having a battle of ideologies. Nuke is trying to convince Steve Rogers that America is awful and they have been involved in a lot of really horrible things, and he's trying to convince Steve Rogers that America is not worth fighting for. And then this is really Steve's battle, trying to remain resolute that while America is not perfect, it is worth dying for, it is worth fighting for. And that is really the crux of this story, is the battle of ideologies between these two characters. And the idea that Nuke is part of the super soldier program, that he was a super soldier from the Vietnam era, that is absolutely genius. Now, I will go ahead and tear a corner off my geek card right here, because I have never read the original Nuke story from Frank Miller's Daredevil run. The only thing that I know about Nuke comes from this story and the Jessica Jones Netflix series. And I really like the idea here that he is a product of the Vietnam War, and while the circumstances that created him are very similar to the circumstances that created Steve Rogers, it's a very different kind of war, and so he would end up becoming a very different kind of super soldier. Even someone like me, who is not very politically savvy, knows that World War II is pretty much the only war that just about everyone will say that was a justified war, and that that was the good war. A lot of people will say that was the last great generation, that that was a war that we had to fight. Nobody is going to say that that was a morally gray war. It was pretty much good guys versus bad guys. Now, sure, there were some bad things done by good people. You hear about people like Grant Morrison. He talks about how his dad fought in the war and how his superior officers were okaying some really morally reprehensible stuff during the Second World War. So it's not like that was as morally upright as it is sold to us a lot of times, but compared to the Vietnam War, where Joe Public absolutely hated the Vietnam War, and they even took it out on soldiers. You hear stories about soldiers coming home from the Vietnam War, and people in their hometowns just like yelling at them and throwing stuff at them for participating in this unjustified war as they saw it. So just two completely polar opposite wars, and then you have a Captain America from each war, and they both turned out very differently. I really love that idea, and it really makes me wish that Jason Aaron and Ron Garney could have done an ongoing Ultimate Captain America series, and I don't know why they couldn't have. This was right after Ultimatum. The Ultimate Universe was being reshaped and reformed. We no longer had the Ultimate X-Men series that had been a staple of the Ultimate Universe at this time. We were only getting the Ultimates in 6-issue arcs, and then we would get a brand new creative team, or at least a brand new storyline. So there was really no ongoing book at this moment to kind of tie everything together. I think these guys would have been perfect in an ongoing Captain America book. I really would have liked to have seen that. I really would have liked to have seen more of what these guys would have brought to the table. Initially, whenever the very beginning of the book, we see Nuke has Steve Rogers held prisoner, and Steve is praying, and then Nuke is not only trying to disabuse him of all of the notions that he believes in politically, but he also wants to tell him that there's no God and that he's a fool for believing in God. And I thought that was a little weird, that this book was trying to make the ultimate Steve Rogers into a Christian, or at least someone who believes in God in some way, because the version of Captain America that we had seen by Mark Miller or Mark Millar and Brian Hitch in the Ultimates run before Ultimatum, that did not seem like the kind of character who would be a Christian or who would believe in God. He was too much of a butthole to be a believer. And that's not to say that believers in God and that people of any religion cannot be buttholes, but I do think that they would at least try to hide it a little more and maybe be a little bit more passive in their buttholery. But this guy, he's not very passive. He's very aggressive in how much of a butthole he is. So it kind of came out of nowhere that he believes in God and that he does believe that he's doing the right thing, at least as far as the Bible is concerned. So that was a little weird. I feel like that's the only inconsistency with the Captain America that we get here and the Captain America that we get in the Ultimates by Miller and Hitch. But I don't think that it is such a radical departure that it feels like a brand new character that should have been in its own alternate universe. I still think this feels consistent enough that it still feels like the same character. It just feels like it's one step removed from the same character. It's just not several steps removed where it feels like an entirely different character. But overall, I really love this book. I love the notion of a battle of ideologies between these two Captain Americas of two different generations. I think that is just brilliant. I'm honestly surprised that something like this has not been done before in the main Marvel Universe. I feel like that's a story that once you think about it, once you read this story, you think, well, that's obvious. Why didn't someone do it before? But I guess people were afraid of the politics. Maybe they didn't want to do something that political in the Marvel Universe. I don't know. But I'm really glad that Jason Aaron and Ron Garney were able to do this and thought of the idea to do it. So overall, I really liked this story quite a bit. I was very pleasantly surprised. Very pleasantly surprised reading it. So I hope that you guys liked this review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.